And now, the structure of the majority of the telencephalon is the cerebrum. That's what you're seeing here. When you split it apart, you see that there's more of the telencephalon that's not included in the cerebrum. So we see that difference. The diencephalon, so we said that's the head of the seahorse, this region over here. The diencephalon. And we need to point out the details. The superior portion, we have the area of the epithalamus, the superior part of the diencephalon. You got the walls on the sides, and keep in mind you have the two sides of the brain. So the walls is areas where you see 19 and 20, 22, that's all the thalamus. And the inferior portion, where you see the 21, hypothalamus. So you got the top, epithalamus, the sides, the thalamus, the inferior portion, the hypothalamus.
So the pink one is the epithalamus?
Epithalamus.
Okay.
So that moves us along to the mesencephalon. So we have the head on the seahorse here, and then moving down to the neck region. So all this area of the mesencephalon.
That's the neck of the seahorse?
The neck on the seahorse shape.
Both those parts?
Yeah, both sides across here. The metencephalon. So we're looking at the bulging portion here, metencephalon. And we have the cerebellum. So these two separate regions here making the metencephalon. And then finally the inferior part. The encephalon has the name myelencephalon. And the structure that we're touching here, this is called the medulla oblongata.
Which part?
So we're looking from here down, medulla oblongata, part of the myelencephalon.
Oh, that whole thing at the myelin end.
So again, encephalon is just a larger area, and then the medulla oblongata is the majority of it.
Okay.
It's a structure.
And the pons is where?
The pons, this bulge here. Okay. So we need to move on to number 2, at the bottom of number 2. So we'll point out the terms now: pituitary, optic chiasma, infundibulum. So you notice now, the first one we have optic chiasm and optic nerves. So just like we described in lecture, you see those Roman numerals? So number 2 here, this is the optic nerve, just a little portion of it. And we'll see it connected to an eye model, optic nerve. And when we put the two sides together, our two optic nerves, where they merge together, that's the optic chiasm. So optic chiasma or optic chiasm, depends on the book, where it merges. The pituitary gland, so you can take that, Sean. So we want to start at the hypothalamus. And you see that tiny little stem right here, that white stem? That's that infundibulum, leading to the bulb of pituitary. Pituitary gland, the bulb. And if we're on to the next page. So we have the cerebellum and the hemispheres we're bringing up. So cerebral hemispheres, do you have that brain again? Just the two sides. Oh, it doesn't matter, I'll just grab that real quick. So we have the two cerebral hemispheres, the two halves. put it all together to make the entire cerebrum.
So the cerebrum is the entire brain, or just the top?
Just the top, just the top. Cerebellum, we can put this together here. Cerebellum. We can then start to point out the gyrus. So back to the cerebrum. You have all these bulging areas sticking out. These are called the gyri. And the grooves between them. So the numerous really tight grooves are called the sulcus. Just like on the spinal cord, we had that posterior median sulcus. We also have the fissures. So splitting right down the middle, we have the longitudinal fissure. And just like on the spinal cord, a fissure is a wider gap, a wider separation, longitudinal fissure. We got to stick this on really quick. We have a transverse, meaning horizontal. We have a transverse fissure. So between the cerebrum and the cerebellum, transverse fissure. You gotta split it in half again. Yeah. So the corpus callosum, you're looking at the number 10, all of this arch across here. And this is a connection between the two cerebral hemispheres. So all across here.
What part of the cephalon is that?
We're in the telencephalon. Telencephalon. Yeah, we're in the telencephalon.
Like a cartilage type kind of bind?
All of this is white matter. So white matter, myelinated axons, connecting the two sides. Where are we at now? The vermis, okay, the cerebellum. Let's get all this together. Steal that from me. All right, so we have a cerebellum. We have the two cerebellar hemispheres, right and left hemisphere. And you notice when it's together, we have the vermis, that medial bulging section. And so now let's kind of skip along. Let's go over to where we have the arbor vitae. Arbor vitae, cerebellar cortex somewhere. 25. So we have the entire cerebellum, and just looking at half of it. The arbor vitae is the deeper white matter. So it looks like the white lines on this model. The arbor vitae, the branching tree. The superficial, darker color, the gray matter, that's the cerebellar cortex. Arbor vitae is deep in the white lines. The darker surface, cerebellar cortex. And since we're here, we'll bring up that term, the neural cortex. The telencephalon is specifically called the cerebral cortex. Cerebral cortex. The cerebellum has the cerebellar cortex. And just both of them are known as the neural cortex. The gray matter at the surface of either of these portions. So neural kind of includes both of them. The cerebellar cortex and the cerebral cortex. And we'll point out some more structures. So where do we go to? Where do we skip along from? 17? You need your list?
No, you don't have the
Good?
models in front of us.
So this corpus callosum, yeah, right across here, the number 10. So that leads us to the septum pellucidum,
Number?
right at this area. Septum pellucidum is this portion I'm touching here.
The nasal cavity.
Well, an example of a septum, here's our nasal septum. People get that pierced, this portion. But the fact that it divides chambers, it divides different spaces.
Personally.
In fact, since we have that term, you see behind you